So today is Thursday, August 22nd. We just finished our second block day of the week. We wrapped up locating a point on a line using weights, and we very quickly wrapped up midpoints. There was one little thing I didn't do from the midpoints lesson in the book, but it's not on the quiz. I might show it in this video. I might not, but actually, I probably won't show it in this video. This is going to be specific for the quiz on Monday. So it's more a review for the quiz on Monday. On the quiz on Monday, you have to locate a point on a line using weights. You have to locate the midpoint of a line. You have to locate a point, a midpoint, or using weights when it's on a graph. So a coordinate plane, X and a Y. We did that in class, which I'll do one here as well, one or two. And then we haven't even done this lesson, but you're going to have to locate a point on a line using ratios. It's called partitioning a line. So that's the lesson we get tomorrow on Friday. Everybody will get that Friday. I might go ahead and do those in this to put it all in one video. It depends on how long this runs. If not, I'll do a second video with all of those problems worked out so you know whether or not you're getting it right. And if you're not able to get them right, what you're doing wrong. All right. So let's go ahead and get going. I thought I gave you a different sheet than this, but I think these are actually the same problems as that one-page sheet I gave you. This is page 47 in the book. Leave. Yeah, 47. I assigned 1 through 8. I told you in class that they give you this really weird setup right here where they've got A, B, C, D, and E. You're not using all of those at once. They just were trying to save room and put all of the points on one number line. And then in the questions, they're only talking about a couple specific points at a time. So if you notice, I've kind of drawn that red line. In question one, we're only talking about point B and point D. So I use the number line from here to D. And I act like C doesn't even exist. And I didn't write in -5, -4, -3, etc. Because I don't really need them. So again, I'm just using the 2 points that it talks about, B and D, and I'm only using the section of the number line that has B and D as the endpoints. And now with that in mind, I'm going to do this pretty fast. We've been doing it in class. I'm going to go ahead. There's no button. Oh, there we go. And I'm just going to do the formula. So I read the question. Point B weighs 3 times as much as. I talked about it in some classes because it was confusing. I didn't realize it until probably much later in the lessons. That part doesn't really matter. A lot of people were getting confused and they're writing the weight with point D. It literally says right here, B weighs 3. It says it right there. That's the weight of B. Don't worry if you're confused and you don't understand what 3 times as much means. It's telling you right there, B weighs 3. And it does that in pretty much every problem. C has a weight of 3. A has a weight of 2. D has a weight of 3. If it doesn't tell you specifically that the point weighs this, then the point has a weight of 1. So it doesn't tell us anything about D. I didn't circle anything about D in problem number 1, right? Doesn't tell us anything about D. That means D has a weight of 1. So just read it and look at the obvious weight, I guess, and use that. And I'm going to do the next two. So if you're confused, hopefully it'll be clear after that. So for B, let's make this a little, that's probably good enough. So B has a weight of 3. D, we just said it isn't mentioned, so it has a weight of 1. And again, I'm doing number 1 right now. So now that's the first step we said in the process. Step 1, write the weight of the point either under or above the point. So now we're on to step 2. Step 2, we said, was to circle the weight and the value on the number line. -6 is the value on the number line. 2 is the value on the number line. That circle should help you remember that this step means you're going to multiply. So I'm going to multiply -6 times 3 and 1 times 2. A dot means multiply. Hopefully you know that. I don't use the little X anymore. You do that before you get to algebra. Now we said, all right, well, I'm going to take those two values, and just to save space, I'm not going to work it out one step at a time, but I'm going to take that value, which is -18. -6 times 3 is -18. 1 times 2 is 2. And I'm going to add those together. And then I'm going to divide. So that was like step 3, is adding those two together. And then the last step is to add all of the weights together. In this case, just 3 plus 1. So if you do the math on that, I will make this a little bit darker now. -18 plus 2 is -16 divided by 4, -4. And again, just so you understand what that means, the weighted average, if B is more important, the weighted average, so the midpoint would be at -2. So if I were to just imagine, well, where would the middle be? What value would the middle be? Well, it would be right here at -2, right exactly in the middle. Well, B is more important, so we are locating our point at -4 because the more important point pulls the average in that direction, the normal average toward the more important point. And then the next two problems, really the next, all of them really are just like that. We have to make a little bit of an adjustment here and there. So that was the answer number 4. Really quickly, I'm going to start going a little bit faster. I guess I'll draw. Yeah, I'll just draw. Actually, here I'm gonna scratch through and change it on the number line here. So the next one, point C has a weight of 3. So I'm just gonna write C over the top of that. Point E has a weight of 5. Oh, wait, and then the value of 3 is -1. So point E has a weight of 5. So I'm just gonna scratch that out and put E. The value of E is 6. So that would be the part of the number line I'm using. From C to E, and the value of E is -1. The value of E is 6. Now I can just go ahead and say, all right, well, what is the weight? Well, the weight, I'm actually just going to write the weight below down here on this one. It tells me right there, weight of C is 3. Weight of E, well, I wrote over the top of that. Weight of E is 5. So I write the weight of C equals 3. Weight of E equals 5. Now I circle. That reminds me that the next step is multiply. I'm just going to start taking shortcuts. -1 times 3. So I'm doing what's circled right here. -1 times 3 is -3. I'm going to add that to 6 times 5. I divide that by the weights added together, which is 3 plus 5. And I get, what's that? 27 divided by 8. If you convert, why did that not work? There we go. If you convert that to a decimal, which most of you did, it comes out to be 3.375. And that means that the weighted average, if E is more important than C, it would make sense that it would be a little bit closer to E. So probably somewhere right in there. You can figure out the midpoint real quick. If there were no weights at all, then I would be right in the middle, which would be what? 5 divided. So that'd be 2.5. And it makes sense that from 2.5, we slid a little bit to the right because E was more important. You're not following the conceptual stuff. Just make sure you know how to calculate that value. There is one conceptual question on each section of the quiz, but you can still do okay if you're not getting the conceptual part when I talk about it. That's when I start talking about what would the midpoint be and which direction would the midpoint go. That's the conceptual part. All right. You can always stop this and rewind. So I'm going to go pretty fast. A has a weight of 2. B has a weight of 3. Pretty straightforward. So A would be -9. What is it? Oh, actually, D I can use. D is already on there. D is 2. Again, conceptually, the midpoint would be negative. What's that? Oh, let me do this because this is actually something on the quiz that we haven't gone over a ton. If you want to find the midpoint, it's like the weights are 1 and 1. They're equally weighted. So there is a question on the quiz that we haven't really specifically done. We've talked about the fact that we actually had a bell work problem where they were equally weighted, and all we did was just find the average. It's like using a weight of 1. So if I used a weight of 1 right here, I said, well, the weight is 1, meaning that I'm finding the midpoint. If each of them is weighted 1, I'm finding the midpoint. So I could do the same formula to find the midpoint that I do to find it when the weights are different. It's just I would make the weights 1 and 1. So if I did that, I'd have -9 plus +2, add the weights together. So I'm dividing by 2. It's just a normal average, just like you would if you just had two numbers and you averaged them. So that'd be -7. Oh, I don't know why I did that. Hopefully you caught that. If you didn't catch that, go back and change it. I was already adding them together in my head. The weights added together are 1 plus 1, which means the total is 2. So I would get -7 divided by 2. So the midpoint can be found using weights. There's actually a midpoint formula that you get on the reference sheet. So I'll put that up on the board for the Monday quiz. It can be used on number lines. It can be used when you have a graph of a line. But you can also just use weights. Same thing we did when we did it using weights. That's not part of this problem, but I just remember that is on the quiz, so I wanted to go over it. Let's just read this. All right, so back to the problem. So I'm doing number 3. It says A has a weight of 2. Oh, I got to change the value. A is not -9, so I'm going to use -9. So the weight of A, it says, is 2. The weight of D, it says, is 3. That's underneath the W. You can look at your sheet if you need to. And now I just do my formula. Circle, 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 circle. That -9 times 2 is -18, plus 2 times 3 is 6, divided by all of the weights added together. So we should, I believe, get -12 divided by 5. So the answer was, and I remember this is correct, -2.4. Let's see. Again, they're giving you more points than you need, so you just ignore any points they don't talk about. I'm not going to keep redrawing. I'll just highlight on the number line which points we're using. If they tell you the point weighs twice as much, that's going to be a 2. They tell you y weighs 3 times as much, that's going to be a 3. They don't say anything around x about it weighing anything, which means x is going to be 1. So I'll write. It gets a little confusing when you have variables like points on the line that are the same. Like we use W as the weight, but then they also have point W. So just make sure you keep that clear. My W that I wrote is about the weight. This W right here is just the name of the point that's on the line. I wish they wouldn't do that, but they also use X and Y sometimes, even though when we do the graphing one down here, you're going to have X and Y coordinates as well as X and Y points, which does get a little confusing. Yeah, I wish they wouldn't do that, but you may see that on the EOC. So W is 2, it says. They don't mention X, so we can say X has a weight of 1. And they tell us that Y has a weight of 3 times, which means Y is 3. And then we don't use any of this. They don't mention Z in this problem, so we're not going to use that for this problem. Let's switch to red. So I circle. So the weight of y is 0. Some kids were a little confused by that, but 0 is a number. I mean, you can use 0. You can get 0 as an answer. So don't be super confused. The 0 is just a number. That's a weight of 1. And W is -7, which is a weight of 2. Ah. Oh, son of a gun. Ah. Trying to, let me see if I can do it if I use my little, there we go. All right. So now, I'm just going to kind of do the math in my head if you're not sure where it comes from. 2 times -7 is -14, so that's point W. I'm going to add that to 1 times -4, so that's point X, what's in the circle where point X is. It's not really a circle, but, and then anything times 0, in this case, 3 times 0 is 0. And yeah, we do write it down. It won't affect anything, but we do write it down. Just follow the process. Now we add all the weights up. 2 plus 1 plus 3. So I get -18. What's that? Divided by 6. So again, if I'm locating point P, which is what it asked for, that's what I just solved for. Point P would be at -3. Again, I'm not going to ask you to actually put a point on the line, but just know that's what we're doing. We're locating the point on the line based on all of those different weights and values that they're giving us. So that was -3. Let's see, X is 4 times as much. So W equals 4 for X. Z, it doesn't say, it just says as point Z, so they're not giving us one, which means Z is going to be 1. And then Y is 3 times as much, so literally Y is 3. Circle, circle, and circle. So 4 times -4, I'm just multiplying what's in the circles. 3 times 0, and 1 times 5, divided by the weights added together. 4 plus 3 plus 1. And I get, what's that? -11 over 8, I believe. And that would give me, I think this was the answer, -1.375. So that's number 5. I'm not going to do number 6. It's the same exact process. I'll set it up really quickly. You can do the math. I do remember the answer, so I'll write the answer down. But again, W has a weight of 2. Y has a weight of 4. Z has a weight of 3. They just give you all of those. So I'm ignoring point X. It's like X doesn't exist since they don't mention it. So W has a weight of 2. Y has a weight of 4. And Z, oh, I totally got that wrong. W has a weight of 2. If you wrote that, I messed up. W's over there. Y is 4. That is correct. I put that in the right spot. And then Z has a weight of 3. So 3 is actually there. So there you go. And then you do that and you can finish off the rest of it. But the answer to number 6 was, oh boy, I don't remember if it was either 1/9 or -1/9. And if you converted that to a decimal, it's 0.11111 forever. The real way to write that is 0.1 repeating. Is it negative though? I don't remember. -14 plus 50. No, it's positive. So it's positive. So it's a positive 1/9. All right, and then the last two, and these are apparently I did not give you. I thought I gave you a different sheet of problems. Apparently, these are the same exact problems as I gave you in class. So I'm learning busy page 47. Point U weighs twice as much as X. Point W. All right. So here's the only difference we said. If we are doing this on a coordinate plane, so we have a graph. I don't think, can I zoom? Yeah, I can't zoom in anymore. Well, let's do this. Oh, no, I actually can't zoom in anymore. I thought I could zoom in on it. All right. I can't zoom in anymore. You have it, this sheet though, or you can look at your book. If U weighs twice as much as X, I'm going to ignore all those other points on there. So I'm going to ignore V. I'm going to ignore what else? Z. Well, I'm using U and X. I'm going to ignore W. See, it gets kind of cluttered, but we're only using U, that one right there. Ignore Y, and where's X? And then that point right there. Those are the only two coordinates we're using. So instead of having a number line with just one number at the endpoints like we've had, like we did way up here, and pretty much every problem, we just had one number as our values. When we do a coordinate plane, we're always going to have two because we need an X and a Y. Any point on a coordinate plane has an X and a Y. So we need two numbers, and they've already given them to you. I believe on the quiz, I did change it and I did give them to you as well, just to help you save time. But you need to know how to find the X and Y value of a point, especially if you're still working on meeting the algebra requirement. All right, so with that in mind, I'm only focused on U and X, this one here and this one here. I follow the exact same process. It says U weighs twice as much. So the weight of U, I'm just going to kind of write over stuff, is 2. If it doesn't say anything about X, then the weight of X equals 1. Now my next step, and this is going to get a little tricky. Let's make it a little bit more narrow. I first of all have to circle the weight. Why did it not change? Try that again. There we go. I circle the weight and the first X value. So that's from the endpoint U. I now do the same thing. I circle this X value and the weight of the other endpoint. Because remember, we're acting like X is the endpoint because that's all they talk about in the problem. That's why we're only using those two. Now I do the same process. The circle means multiply. 2 times -8 is -16. 1 times +2 is 2. I divide that by the weights added together, so 2 plus 1. And that gives me -14 divided by 3. So if you change that, it's -4.67 if you change it to a decimal. So I asked in class, and I'll ask you now, and you can pause it if you need to think about it. What in the world did I just do? What is that -4.67? I want you to think about that, see if you can figure it out. But then it's kind of important that you get the conceptual stuff because so I put that on quizzes, and the EOC is definitely conceptual. I just calculated out the X value of the point that I'm trying to put on the line. Like I'm trying to locate the correct spot on the line based on the weights that they gave me. Well, that -4.67 is my X value. I still need a Y value though. Like I can't put a point on a line on a graph with only one number. I need an X and a Y. But I now know my X, why did that not, oh, it didn't work actually. My X is going to be -4.67. I just need to try to figure out what the Y is. And I do the same exact process, except I'm going to do it with the Y values instead of the X values this time. Need to go back and watch that process. I guess I'll use green, make it pretty dark. So I'm going to circle the weight again, same weight. The weight didn't change. And now the Y value, which is -5 for that, for the U, point U. I circle the 1 weight, but now I'm going to circle that with the 0 for the point X. And now that tells me to multiply, and I just keep going and do the same process. So it's 2 times -5. The 2 is the weight. -5 is the Y value for point U. So 2 times -5 is -10. I add that to 1 times 0, which is 0. And I divide by the weights added together, which is 2 plus 1. The weights didn't change, so I should always get the same denominator when I'm doing the y values. The denominator should be the same for x and y. So that would be -10 divided by 3, which equals -3.3333333 forever, which you write like that. So my value for the y is that. Now, we said in class, the nice thing about these types of problems when you use a coordinate plane is that when I go to put this point on the line, it better fall on the line. Like if I land here when I'm trying to put this point on the graph, and when I say this point, I'm talking about this right here. If I don't land on the line, I did something wrong. Like if this ordered pair has to be on the line, I'm trying to locate a point on the line. Whole point of the problem. So if I go, and this is going to be tough without zooming in, -4.67 means I come, so -4 is right here. So it would be a little bit left of that. Actually, you can rewind this. I can get rid of all of that now. Get rid of all of that because now we're just trying to locate the point and see if it's on the line or not. So -4.67. Yeah, that's fine. Let's see, 5 would be right in the middle of -4 and 6. So it'd be somewhere like maybe right there. So if I then go down to -3.3, I'm hoping that's on the line. Well, here's -2, there's -3. And yeah, that looks like that would be on that line. Somewhere right about there is where I would hit. And I could see that being -3.3. So I feel pretty confident that I did that correctly. I'm not going to do the second problem with that. Those take a little bit longer. You do have that on the quiz there. I forget what the answer to 8 was, but in class, I think I wrote oh, you know what? It's on the recording. Oh, I didn't record today's class. Shoot. I'll put the answers up on the recording for tomorrow real quick. I'll hopefully remember to do that. But again, you have the process for at least knowing how to work out one of them, so hopefully you can follow that process. All right, so that was everything that we did on locating a point on a line using weighted averages. I'm going to go ahead and move into midpoints, which I did not even assign anything for midpoints. But I'm going to go ahead and go into it and just work through some of the practice problems that I'll wind up assigning tomorrow. So I'll include them here. Let's see, what do I need to do? There we go. I think I need to go all the way there. There are some good examples too. I would go and look at the examples. I may possibly this weekend go in and work out some examples to help you out. Oh, there is a midpoint formula that you do get. I don't think it's that formula. I think the reference sheet has a different formula than that. Oh, here it is right here. So this is the midpoint formula right here. I'm going to give you a reference sheet and you can practice using that if you want in some of these problems. I'm going to actually do it using weighted averages because that's what we've done. I'm actually going to teach you how to do every single lesson in this chapter just using weighted averages. That way you're not going to get confused, hopefully, with 3 different ways to do something. You do have to make some adjustments on one of the pieces, but constructions I really need to go over. Oh, really quickly, I did not do this in class. I believe I did this in the separate video on midpoints. But if I know, this is super, super important, but we'll cover it a lot more in other lessons, but I still want you to know it. If I know that T is the midpoint, there is one number one concept. This should be a reminder you set in your phone and just have it go off every day because you're going to use this in the future as well, not just on this quiz. the whole, like, I can't think of another word but point, but the main theme, the main idea about knowing a point is the midpoint is that it means this segment here is the same length as this segment here. Like that, you have got to have that down as an automatic. As soon as you hear something say midpoint, you have got to know that it creates two equal length, smaller line segments. So the yellow segment and the green segment that are left on the screen now, those are the same length if T is the midpoint, which it, oh, I didn't do that, which it tells you T is the midpoint. Like it tells you that right here. So if you know T is the midpoint, you know, and I'm going to write it now because if you can write it, you can then just change that to an equation. We say that means the length of RT, normally the length of line segment RT, is equal to the length of TQ. Like that's the whole point of a mid segment. I didn't like whatever at the time. Like that should be automatic. Now, the only other thing you have to know to create your equation and then solve is you just have to, if you watch the video on what is a variable specific to geometry, hopefully you're good on this. I know that little expression there is also going to represent the length of RT. That represents the length of Q, well, TQ, QT, TQ, same thing. And then the last piece is we talked about substitution. Substitution means, well, if two things are equal, I can use either of them. So if if RT is also equal to 2x plus 3, grab next. Oh, why didn't I get rid of all that? So RT is equal to that. TQ is also equal to 4x subtract 5. Well, if these things are also equal down below, like RT is equal to that, TQ is equal to that, I can replace these things up here. I can replace them with the expressions with the variable. So I can just say, all right, well, then that means over here, that's just like having 2x subtract 3. I did in class something where I talked about, I didn't know. If I go into a store and I have a $5 bill in my left pocket and 5 ones in my right pocket, I can pay with either one. They're the same value. They're interchangeable. I can substitute the 5 for the 5 ones or the 5 ones for the 5. It's the same thing here. RT is the same thing as 2x plus 3. So I can substitute that in for RT. TQ is the same thing as 4x subtract 5. So I can substitute that in for 4x subtract 5. That is still an equivalent expression to the one that's in black right above it. But now I have an actual equation that I can solve, which is the whole goal is to create an equation. And then ultimately they want you to find, oh, and make sure, remember, once you solve for a variable, make sure you read the question. A bunch of people made that mistake on the quiz that I just finished, or I'm in the middle of grading actually. They solved for X perfectly, and then they forgot to go back and give me the answer I asked for. I'll talk more about that in class. So in order to solve this, I cannot just make that 6x. Does not work that way. Oop, that didn't work. Oop, that didn't work. What is this? Ah, there we go. So I cannot just say that's 6x because that's like saying, I mean, I don't even know how you would do, like, which side would you even put it on? How would you know where the 6x goes? You'd basically, though, let's say you said, oh, I'm just going to move that 2, I'm going to move the 4x and combine it with the 2x on the left. So you'd be doing that. But the problem is the number one rule of solving equations is whatever I do on one side, I have to do on the other side. So I'd have to come right back and do that, which means I still have x's on both sides. So you can't just combine that into 6x. you have to think about getting rid of variables from one side of the equation. So I'm, you can get rid of them on either side, but I'm going to get rid of the 2x over here. Well, now whatever I do on one side, I have to do on the other side, and that will get rid of the x's on the left. So those all go away. And I have now, and make sure you bring the negative down with the 3. Now I have an equation that should be pretty simple to solve for everybody. If you're struggling on this, you really have got to practice. A lot of people need work on their algebra based on the quizzes that I'm grading right now. A lot of people got the setup correct, but they could not do the algebra, which costs you quite a few points. So, I mean, you can still get a C sometimes, but it'd certainly be nice on the easier quizzes to be getting 100, not a C, so that you kind of have some room to breathe when you get a really tough quiz. So x equals 1. Oh, it's so hard to there. But again, they did not ask for x. They asked, what is the measure of RT? Well, we said right here, RT is 2x plus 3. So if I know x is 1, I just say 2 times 1, that's what x is, plus 3. I just plugged in x. I'm sorry, I plugged in 1 for x, and I get 5. So RT, the measure of RT is 5. 2 times 1 is 2, plus 3 is 5. So I think that's in the other video. I haven't really done it in class. It's not really on this quiz. I'll probably put it on the next quiz with bisectors and whatever the next lesson is. Let's see. Midpoint. Yeah, here's the midpoint. So I'm going to treat this like it's a weighted average again. I'm trying to keep it. A lot of you can figure out the midpoint anyway, but for those of you struggling, just understand if you're talking about finding the midpoint, it just means that the end point, so K and M, so I'm going from K to M right there, just means they're both weighted equally. They both have a weight of 1. So K is weighted 1, M is weighted 1, and now we just follow the same weighted average formula. I circle the 4 and the 1. I circle M is 0, so I circle the 0 and the 1. 1 times -4 is -4. 0 times 1 is 0. I add the weights together. So I get -4 divided by 2. So the midpoint of Km is -2. And there's multiple ways to do that. I'm going to just do it with weights in this. If you want to use the midpoint formula that's in the book, I showed it a second ago in the beginning of this video. It gives you an X and a Y value in the formula. Let me go show it. So it gives you an X and a Y portion of the formula, but if it's not on a coordinate plane, you just use this part of the formula. If it's on just a regular number line, like just a left and right number line, like I'm doing now, and you just have 2 endpoints, you just use what I just circled, x1 plus x2 divided by 2. You only use this entire formula when it's on a graph, when you have an x and a y value. So that's when you would use the entire thing. I will give that to you in class if you want to practice with it. Let's see. Oh, so I'll probably assign 1 through that's exactly what we just did. There's no difference in that. Like I thought there was a section where you had to find they give you the midpoint, but you have to find the end point. Hmm. Use the number line to find the coordinates of the midpoint. Midpoint. Using a normal form. Yeah, none of these are very difficult. Oh, there's one here. So again, here's a situation. If they tell me M is the midpoint, I know that LM equals MN. I also know that's the length of LM. That is the length of MN. So I can now set those two things equal to each other, and then you solve for Y. So that's an example of what I did before. Oh, come on. There we go. Coordinates of the midpoint. Oh, so here's one where they don't give you the graph, but they give you coordinates. So this one would be a lot easier to use the formula. I'll always give you graph paper though, and you could draw it out and do it. But you're basically doing that x1 plus x2 divided by 2 to get the x. So you would just say this is x1, this is x2. So 5 plus 3. Ooh, that didn't work. So you would say 5 plus 3, that's x1 and x2 divided by 2. So my x value here is 4. And then I do the same thing with the y values. This would be y1, y2. So it would be 11 plus 1 divided by 2. So my y value would be 6. So the point that the answer would be 4 comma 6 if you want to try to do some of those. You just use that formula I just showed you a minute ago. Trying to find one where you are given the midpoint. Yeah, here we go. So these are tricky. I don't think I have anything like this on the quiz, but you will see this on district stuff. They actually are asking for the end point, not the midpoint. They give you the midpoint. They say that B, that's the midpoint. Now, I will tell you, actually pretty easy to draw these out. Um, Where is it easy? You'd need a pretty big graph paper sometimes, but to draw it out, if B is the midpoint, when you go, oh, I can't explain it without having a graph. Shoot. I'll do it the other way. If B is the midpoint, God dang it. I really need to. I'm not going to put it in this video. I'm already running way long and I don't want to. So at some point, I do need to do that though. So if you want to remind me in class, I need to do a video where you find the end point if they give you the midpoint. They say B, so that is the midpoint. C is one of the end points. So it's kind of like this. They have a line on a graph and it goes from -5 comma 4 to what? -2. So something like that. This is the end point. This is the midpoint. And then they want to know, well, where is the rest of the line? Like, where is that point right there? What is that value? So you got to figure out what that value would be. You can use the equation, but you have to use it differently. You don't know what the y and x are. You don't know x1 and y1. You have to solve for those, or x2 and y2, depending on which one you want to call it. And there's another intuitive way to do it, but I'm not going to do it in this video. Well, let's see here. Kind of, it's the same type of problem. They just don't give you the line. You have to understand how to draw the line. So that would look like this, F, G, and then M would be the midpoint right here. And then so this would be 5y plus 13. And over here, this would be 5 subtract 3y over there. So same type of problem. They're just not giving you a picture. I don't know which ones of these I'll actually assign. I'll look through the book one. I really wanted to do a simple one where they give you the midpoint, but I don't have any of those, it looks like. Um, Yeah. They do not give you any where you get the end point or they give you the midpoint. Yeah. So I'm not going to worry about it then. So that's all I'm going to do in this. Like I said, I'll be doing these pretty frequently since we're rushing so fast through stuff. And I know once you leave, if you're struggling and you're not coming up with the answers, or if you don't even know if you're getting the correct answers, it's hard to really practice. So I'll start making sure I do this kind of stuff.